The rain came down softly that morning, tapping against the kitchen window like a quiet metronome. Michael leaned against the counter, watching the steam rise from his coffee. His wife, Laura, moved around the kitchen with practiced grace, a blue silk robe tied neatly at her waist, her hair still damp from a shower. It wasn't the way she looked that bothered him. It was the way she moved. Like she was elsewhere. Like she'd already lived this morning in her head 1,000 times and was just going through the motions for his sake. He used to know every detail about her mornings, the way she hummed under her breath while slicing fruit, the half-smile she gave when their dog, Max, brushed against her leg. But now there was silence. Too much silence. "Early meeting?" he asked. Laura nodded without turning. "Yeah. The quarterly review with the new partners. Shouldn't take long." Michael frowned. "Didn't you have that last week?" She froze for half a second, just half a second, before continuing to stir sugar into her coffee. "No, that was the client presentation. This is internal." He wanted to believe her. He wanted to. But that pause hung in the air like static. Michael worked as a project manager for a construction firm, a practical man in a practical world. He liked schedules, structure, certainty, things that fit into neat boxes. His marriage used to be one of those boxes. 12 years of love, laughter, fights, and forgiveness. Imperfect but stable. Lately, though, the box had cracks. Laura had started working late more often. Her phone, once left on the counter, now followed her everywhere. She'd smile at messages that arrived after midnight, saying they were from the team. When he reached for her in bed, she'd roll away, claiming exhaustion. One night, as she slept, Michael reached for her phone. It was face down, locked. The wallpaper, once a photo of them at Mount Rainier, had been replaced with a plain black screen. He turned on his side, staring at her silhouette in the dim light. Something inside him twisted, a dark, nauseating knot. What if it's true? The thought hit him like a cold blade, what if she's seeing someone else? But he wasn't the kind of man who accused without proof. So he waited. And watched. It was Friday when he first saw the car. A silver Audi parked across the street from their house. Laura had told him she'd be home late again, a project emergency. But at 6:47 p.m., she walked briskly out of the front door, her hair loose, wearing a coat Michael hadn't seen before, sleek, black, expensive-looking. She crossed the street, and the passenger door opened. A man stepped out, tall, mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of confidence that came from knowing he could have anything he wanted. He kissed her cheek. Michael's heart slammed against his ribs. They talked for a few seconds. Then she smiled, that smile, the one he hadn't seen in months, and got into the car. The Audi pulled away into the rain. Michael stood behind the curtain for a long time, his reflection ghosted in the glass, the coffee growing cold in his hand. His mind tried to make excuses, a client, a friend, maybe a cousin. But deep down, he already knew. That night, Laura came home smelling of rain and perfume. She hung her coat, kissed him softly, and said, "You're up late." He wanted to scream. Instead, he said, "Just couldn't sleep." Her eyes lingered on him, searching, cautious. Then she smiled again. "Don't wait up next time, okay? I hate when you don't get rest." She walked upstairs, leaving him alone with the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He stared at the empty hallway. The house suddenly felt too big, too hollow. Every framed photo on the wall, vacations, anniversaries, birthdays, felt like props from a life that no longer existed. The silence was unbearable. So he did what desperate men do when love turns to suspicion. He started digging. Over the next 2 weeks, Michael became a ghost in his own home. He checked her mileage before and after she went out. He searched her browser history, only to find it cleared every day. He found a second phone charger in her purse. One evening, when she was in the shower, he unlocked her laptop with an old password, the one she used before they got married. He found nothing, except a folder named, Work Expenses. Inside were PDFs of receipts from restaurants and hotels. Most were legitimate business entries. But one made his stomach drop. The Ivy Hotel, 1-night stay, 2 guests. The date was last Friday. Michael stared at it, hands trembling. The room spun. That night, he slept on the couch, pretending he'd fallen asleep watching TV. But the truth was, he couldn't stand to lie beside her anymore. Saturday morning came with the smell of pancakes and forced normalcy. Laura hummed as she cooked, like nothing was wrong. He watched her. Every move. Every word. Finally, he said, "The Ivy Hotel. That's an expensive place." Her hands froze on the spatula. "Oh, yeah," she said after a beat. "Business dinner ran late. The client covered it." Michael nodded slowly. "Client stayed over too." She looked up, eyes sharp now. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," he said, forcing a smile. "Just asking." A long silence filled the room. She turned back to the stove. "You're being weird lately," she said quietly. He wanted to tell her he knew. That he'd seen everything. But something inside him, a strange, cold instinct, told him to wait. To let it play out. Because the truth, once out, can never be taken back. Through a contact at work, Michael found out who the man was, Ethan Reynolds, one of Laura's clients from a tech firm downtown. Divorced. No kids. Reputation for charm. Michael started driving by Ethan's office during lunch breaks. Watching. Waiting. Once, he saw Laura's car in the parking lot. That night, when she said she was working late, he followed her. The rain poured harder than ever, Seattle drowning in gray. Laura parked 2 blocks away from the Ivy Hotel. Ethan was waiting outside under the awning. They went inside together, hand in hand. Michael sat in his car, the wipers squealing against the glass, his jaw tight, his breath coming in short bursts. Hours passed. He didn't move. At 11:23 p.m., they emerged again. Laughing. Kissing. And that was the moment something inside him broke. Over the next week, Michael's mind spiraled into a quiet, methodical storm. He didn't confront her. Didn't shout. Didn't beg. He pretended everything was fine. He made her coffee every morning. Kissed her cheek when she left for work. Sent her flowers on Wednesday. She smiled, genuinely, it seemed, and told him she loved him. But he knew better. On Friday, he told her he'd be out of town for a project in Tacoma. She kissed him goodbye, her lips tasting like guilt. Instead, he waited outside the Ivy Hotel again. 11:02 p.m., the Audi arrived. 11:06, Laura stepped out, same black coat. 11:08, Ethan followed. They disappeared inside. Michael followed 10 minutes later, calm as ice. The lobby was dimly lit, the air thick with perfume and rain. Michael asked the clerk for a room, his voice steady. He waited until the elevator doors closed on Laura and Ethan before taking the next one. The camera in the hallway blinked red as he stepped out. He knew which room it was, 312, the one from the receipt. He stood there for a long time, hand hovering over the handle. He could hear muffled laughter through the door. A man's voice. Then hers. And just like that, all the love he'd ever felt turned to ash. He didn't knock. He didn't break the door down. He simply slipped the room key he'd bribed the clerk for into the lock and opened it. The scene froze in his mind forever, 2 people, tangled in sheets, startled faces, shock, shame. Laura's voice broke first. "Michael." He dropped the hotel receipt on the floor. I just wanted to see it for myself, he said quietly. Now I have. Then he turned and walked out before she could speak again. The divorce was quiet, efficient, bloodless. Laura cried when she signed the papers, but Michael didn't. He'd already mourned her long before that night. The house went to him. The Audi went to her. Seattle kept raining. Sometimes, he'd see her name in his inbox, long, unread messages she sent weeks apart. Apologies. Explanations. Promises that meant nothing. He never replied. One evening, as the sun set over the Sound, Michael stood on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the rain blur the skyline. Max, older now, leaned against his leg. For the first time in months, the silence didn't hurt. He smiled faintly to himself, not because he'd won, but because he'd survived. Some storms destroy everything. Others wash away what was never meant to last.